Well, hello. So, today is 3 days out from July, from the official start date of Shift 30 for 30. Let me go over to this. So, about 5 minutes ago, I had no idea where I wanted to take this video. Um, I was thinking maybe I could talk about my beef with Rob Hardy about cilantro because, oh my god, what a crazy fucking guy. He doesn't like cilantro. I don't think that is acceptable at all. I really was considering kicking him out of Shift 30 for that. Um, but I don't think that's what I want to talk about today. I think that what I want to talk about is this tweet here from Rival. So let me just read it. The pressure to know whether what you're saying is true or false, or whether you believe it or not, or whether it is fiction or non-fiction before you say it, and even before substantial time has passed after having first said it, is nothing but an op. So this is not a new idea. Like, I've seen rivals say this before, and I've said this kind of thing before in a way. I've never said anything as an op. I don't really know what that's. Anyway, Rival is also a huge Eugene Genlin fan, student. I don't know where he's at with it right now, but I know that he has spent a lot of time with focusing a lot of time with Eugene Genlin's work. And so I resonate with a lot of what he talks about because I share that, and I agree with that, and Eugene Genlin is extremely compelling and whatnot for me. So, but yeah, this idea of that we have to know whether what we're going to say is true or false before we even say it. It's, what's another way to say this? Like, instead of using this op thing, it's just like ridiculously limiting. And I think it stands in the way of so much. And I think there are some, I don't know necessarily what the assumptions are there, but I think there are some assumptions that aren't there, that could be there, which I have, that make this easier for me to play with. And that is that you can't know whether what you're saying is true or false until you say it. And that's a weird thing to say. It immediately begs the question of, like, what the hell is truth? What the hell is false? So I don't think I want to really dive into that question here, but I guess this is something for me to, a place where I can reiterate Genlin. It's like, when you're doing therapeutic work, and this is what Genlin and Carl Rogers together, they discovered is, like, the key factor in therapeutic movement and therapeutic change is if a person is paying close enough attention to what they're saying that they can notice the felt sense, right? And what they what they saw in all their research and in reviewing just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of therapy recordings and stuff. It's like some people will be talking and they'll be like, uh, I don't know. Well, maybe not that. It's more like, You know, like they say something and they're like, ah, actually, that doesn't seem right. Now that I say it, that's not quite it. It's something else. That's like the essence of focusing. That's the core of focusing. Saying something and paying close enough attention to yourself, to your body, that you're able to be like, actually, it's not that. I'm not happy. I feel joy, but like, you know. Whereas you can go into therapy and whatever, you can go through life just running scripts, right? And maybe you develop that script intellectually, where you're like, well, logically this makes sense, there's no contradiction here. Like, well, if this is how I feel, then this must be why. Like, this is definitely the cause, and this is definitely what the consequence will be, etc., etc. Like, I have it all figured out. And when I go to therapy, I just tell my therapist that, and he's like, yeah, cool. Or he just tells me what he thinks, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I guess that's what it is. Since you're smart, you do therapy for a living, like, it must be what you say it is, right? But then you're missing the entire thing that makes therapy work. You're missing noticing whether it's true for you. You miss saying it out loud and being like, is that right? It's like, how do you feel? Sad? No, actually, sad is not quite it. That, like, and a process model, and much of Eugene Gendlin's work, not only a process model, is about asking that question, or that's part of the way that you can explain what this work is about. It's like, how is it possible that you can say something and know that that's not it? Right? Like, he also talks about the example of forgetting somebody's name and trying to remember it, and maybe even people are even saying like, oh, is it this? And you know it's not any of those things. Nothing that comes back to you is it. And at the same time, you can't remember. So if somehow you don't know what it is, and you also know that none of those things are it, it's on the tip of your tongue. Like, how does that work? Right? So you can forget a person's name, not be able to call it up and say it, but at the same time you can say other names and be like, nope, that's not it. How do we know that? How can we do that? It's pretty fucking mysterious, right? But that is what happens in therapy when it actually touches on something. There are so many methods that you can go through with therapy, and you can talk about therapy in so many different ways. You can get really scientific about it. You can use philosophy. You can use metaphors. You can be really woo-woo about it. But if at the end of the day, regardless of which one you're using, it doesn't, or you don't, pay attention and focus in on the felt sense and listen to it and take note of it when it shows up and follow it, then you might come up with a very cool new story of who you are and what's going on in your life and why things are the way they are. But like, nothing is really going to change. That's the idea, really. So with this tweet from Arrival, the reason I said it's like such a limitation is because this is huge. This is like not just in therapy, but it's in a variety of parts of our lives. Like, I quote tweeted this, I think, to Michael Ashcroft, because he tweeted one time about, the difficulty of like writing. One of the difficulties of writing is like, it's like, I don't want to write anything that I don't think is right, and so that puts the pressure on you to be like, I'm only going to write a word until I know that it's correct. I'm only going to write a sentence until I know it's correct. But how the fuck do you know until you say it, really? You know? What that does is it just forces you to stay inside, mulling it over, thinking about it. I'm not saying you can't ever write, and you can't ever write true things or really beautiful things this way, but it makes it way harder. There's a book by, I think her name is Sandra Pearl, and I guess she worked with Jen, but it's called Writing from the Felt Sense. And there's a whole process there about bringing the felt sense into the writing process. And I've always been very interested in this process. And I've kind of used it. But then, I haven't really used it because I'm like, well, I don't need to fucking write this shit. Right? That's what I use Otter. It's like, let's skip over this medium that makes the felt sense so much more difficult to notice and sit with. Let's just skip over. We have the technology to do so now, right? Because I think that book was written prior. I mean, it was written prior to 3 years ago, so I don't think we had Otter. We've only had Otter a couple of years, and just that level of transcription software, accessible transcription software. So, but we have that now. So you don't have to write. I was talking with some of you about like my whole profession, my whole career has been as a writer, marketer, copywriter, content person. That's always where I felt most comfortable. But over the years, I was realizing, like, holy crap, I feel so stifled in only ever expressing myself through writing. Whether we're talking about handwriting or typing it, like the way I've explained it to people recently is like, so I have a friend who, like me years ago, was very writing centric and didn't really feel comfortable talking off the cuff that much. Certainly didn't do it that much, even if they were comfortable. Always preferred to write. And I was going through this process personally of being like, fuck, I have so much inside of me that cannot be expressed through words alone. And I would see him trying to express himself, maybe through text conversations. And I'm like, I think because at the time I started using voice messages way more rather than just text. But he would still be texting. And I was just like, man, you're trying to express all of you, the entirety of who you are and what you feel and what you think and all the intricacies of that through your tips of your fucking fingers on your little fucking keyboard on your phone. Like, you really think that'll ever happen? How much are you not going to be able to express? How much are you not going to be able to even realize there is to be expressed if that's the only medium through which you can express yourself? Right? Like, all the dynamics of my voice right now, it's like, oh my God. Even just that. If I were to text that to someone, it would say, oh my God. And you would never know. You would never know how I felt in saying that, right? Which reminds me of a book I read actually many, many years ago, like at the very, very start of my career, which was called How to Argue and Win Every Time by like an undefeated trial lawyer named Jerry Spence. And the title's kind of a misnomer. It's markety. It sounds, like how to win friends and influence people, and it's catchy, so it gets your attention. But immediately in the book, he's like, well, what is winning really? And like, we don't always want to win. That's not always the goal. That's not always what helps anybody, is to win. And if you think that, you're gonna have some problems in your life. But he talks about, I don't even know what exactly the context of him talking about this was in the book. It's been so long. But he talks about charisma, because he's a trial lawyer, and he's speaking to people in the courtroom, persuading them, presenting a case to them. And the power of your voice is really essential there. It's not just about like robotic arguments. Like, it's not just two robots like making a case against each other, and like whichever one is logically correct wins. It's human beings talking to human beings and judging the case based off of how they feel. And your voice, and your actual voice, plays a huge role in that. So he talks about that in the book. And I remember him saying, like, as a exercise, he's like, go out into the forest or somewhere in nature at night, barefoot, and just like sing at the top of your lungs. And this was in a book by a trial lawyer. I loved that. But there was also another one where he was just like kind of making a point, which is like, pick any fucking word in the dictionary, right? And you can say that word a million different ways, right? Like apple, 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 apple. Like, so many different ways, right? And each one expresses something different. They're not devoid of information. They're like ridiculously full of information, ridiculously full. And yet none of that is captured in text, right? And you can make an argument like, yes, there is a way to like convey tone through writing. Yeah, it's true. But let's say we're working with only one word. The infinity of ways that one word can be expressed out loud, and how many things it can express and communicate. You can't, like, maybe that's where like handwriting comes in. And that's an interesting thing, because handwriting is a somatic thing. It comes out of your body. Handwriting does tell you a lot about how a person's feeling. And maybe that's where like fonts can come in. But if we're talking just like pure plain text, texting somebody, none of the nuance comes through. Apple is going to be apple, is going to be apple, is going to be apple, is going to be apple. No matter how I'm saying it. So that's the power of the voice. And you can't really know, like I've said before too, like one of my favorite ways to like try to begin to do focusing and try to articulate felt senses just with a sound, because sometimes like the words just stop you from really knowing like what you feel. There's no word for it. You don't have an idea of what it is, but you just feel it. You're like, or like if you're feeling ashamed and you feel disgusted, like I don't always have a word for that, but I'm like, like I just need to throw up, right? But I can begin to start describing that sound once I make it, and once I like make the sound that's like, oh yeah, that's an expression of how I feel. Then I can try to start putting words onto it, and as I do, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that seems right. Like I'm trying to describe that like disgusted feeling, and it's like I need to throw up, and like that sound is like I'm like heaving or like driving, right? And you try it, and as you try on different descriptions, and you can tell like, yeah, that's it, or no, that definitely doesn't capture what I'm experiencing right now. But you can't know that stuff until you express it out loud. Maybe I'll pull that back and be like, if you're really sensitive and really self-aware, and you just have like a deep somatic awareness, you could probably maybe skip it. Not to say that there's not value and information to be had from saying it out loud, but just that, speaking and making sounds is somatic. It comes out of your whole body. It's not just your voice box. Your whole body is involved. And this is kind of what some people have expressed to me about breath work, is like it puts you, for somebody who's like really not really in their body, it is so somatic. It like engages your whole body. Like, if you try to take a deep breath, like, you realize like how tight your muscles are, like all over. Your back's like, oh shit, like it hurts to deep breathe. So it like kind of forces you to become aware of your body and put you into a somatic spot, whereas you might not have been. So that can be the power of breath. That can be the power of speaking. That can be the power of making noises or singing. But you don't get any of that if you're just typing things. And you don't get any of that if you're just like in your head trying to decide whether what you're about to say is right or not. Because based on what are you saying it's right? Not to say there's no criteria for saying it's right or wrong, but there's a lot that you're going to lose. So that's my rant. that's my rant today on building off of and expanding on Rival's tweet from the other day. I guess it was just yesterday. So, Rival, if you hear this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If not, no worries. You suck anyway. I don't want your opinion anyway. No. That'd be cool. Maybe I'll tag you in this, and maybe I won't. And either way, this has been fun. I hope it's been of value to hear, and that maybe I've fleshed something out that didn't make sense before about focusing and why I make videos like this and the power of the voice and all this stuff. So, and yeah, as always, if you have questions, please ask me. And in the meantime, have a great day.